Verse 4, Job tells them, and be it indeed that I have erred, my error remains within myself. Now, this is a profound statement from Job. This is a profound statement because he is making the assertion regarding his own personal sin and responsibility, his own personal sin and his own personal responsibility. So here in this verse, you don't see him claiming to claim he's perfect. He's not saying he's perfect. He's not saying he's sinless. He's acknowledging in this very verse that indeed he does have errors. He does have problems wherein he has erred. He has. But he says his errors remain with him. But he's making a distinction. He's making an important distinction that we need to make between the personal sin and responsibility that we have indwelling within us, that we deal with and we are frustrated with every day, versus some scandal, which is what is being implied by these men. They are talking about something much bigger. And so Job is saying, listen, I know that I still have resident sin that I'm dealing with. I know that. But what you're talking about is something that is scandalous, something whereby I can be pointed at with blame that I have done and openly scandalized myself in some kind of way before God and before men. So he doesn't claim perfection. He's not saying that. And hypothetically, he concedes that maybe he did do something. But what he is talking about is that what they are talking about what Job is saying is that nothing that I am talking about regarding my own personal situation has not been elevated to the level of scandal that you are accusing me of. Job is talking. Here's the thing. We know that Job was a righteous and upright man. He feared God and eschewed evil, like Sister Sean said. So we know that is true. And we know that he was that way before he lost his wealth and his children, his businesses, and the loyalty of his wife. So we also know that Job, back then, when he was at his most prosperous time, at his peak of prosperity, he would say what he just says here in verse 4. Be it indeed that I have erred, my error remains within myself. Job is saying the same types of sin that are my personal human responsibility in private between me and God that I have right now, I had back then. You follow what I'm saying? Job is saying as a person, as a godly man, he knows that he has sin that he has to deal with on a regular basis. But what he's talking about, there's a distinction between this inherent resident sin that we struggle with daily and the temptations to sin daily versus the scandal that these guys are charging him with. And so Job insists that even if this were so, the error would be his own burden before God. So here's what I'm saying. We don't have to, think about it. We all know that we sin daily. We all know that. We sin daily. There's not a day you go by that goes by without all of us sinning in some way. And like Brother Jeffrey says, it is unfortunate. It is. But we are mortifying sin in this body still. We are dying daily to sin. We are despising sin daily. We are seeing new ways that we have sinned and did not recognize was sin before. We are learning the magnitude of the sinfulness of sin, and we are resisting it at every turn. And so what Job is saying is that I don't need to come tell you about all of that stuff. I'm not going to tell you when in my mind, when somebody did something stupid that I was saying in my mind, in heart of hearts, that person's an idiot. That person's a fool. That person's this or that. Or that personal lust that people have in a momentary situation. Job is saying these are the things that plague all of us. We are all plagued and we are all needled by sin. And he says, if I were to pronounce to you all those things that I do daily, you would never hear the end of it. You would never hear the end of it. I can say the same thing. And I'm sure many of you can say the same thing. It would take a century to just deal with my sin in the last hour, up to and including being negligent to the voice of my God. You see, this is what we don't understand. We don't understand the sinfulness of sin. And it is usually affliction, like what Job is going through, that brings this understanding to light. Affliction will do that to you. It will make you understand how sinful sin really is. The Christian walk is no joke. It is serious business. It really is. And so Job is he's laying out this very strong theological principle, which is this, that personal accountability, it can be should be distinguished from communal prosecution. In other words, if you belong to a group or body of people, a church group, wherever they may be, some temple somewhere, whatever, or the gathers at your house, wherever it may be, order must take place there when we are observing the word of God and worshiping him together. There are certain governing principles. But we're not to go there, and when it talks about confessing our sin, it's not necessarily talking about the laying out every single thing that we did and we thought and we were and it happened. No, but it's dealing with these broader things that affect everyone else. And Job is arguing against that whole thing. There's a difference between that personal accountability that I have versus that accountability that I have to the broader, wider group. And so he's making that distinction, and it can be hard to follow, but this is what he's doing. And he's saying that not every single sin that you commit authorizes public humiliation. Every little sin you do doesn't mean you need to be brought before a committee. This is what Job is speaking about. This is what he's speaking about. There's a difference between discipline, divine discipline, and just that everyday human exposure. There's a difference. And we need to understand that. We know when there's something that we need to confess to the church because we know that we offended the church. We offended the body. And if you've done something like that, you should do that publicly. And this is what they're accusing him of. They're saying you are having this, Job, because there's some open scandal, some offense that you refuse to admit. But keep in mind, Job is making the case here that I am the same right now as I was before I incurred all these losses. So it cannot be some open scandalous sin that brings me to this certain stage and condition. It has to be something more that the Lord has not revealed. And this understanding that Job has should also be something that we understand as as something that should guard us from another error that so many of us often have. Suffering, many times people believe, especially the people like Job's friends, they will believe that his suffering is automatically transfers to them moral authority. And see, this is what we have to guard ourselves against, thinking like that. They believe that because Job is suffering, that they've been handed over moral authority over what he's going through. And Job is going, I don't think so. I don't think so. That is not the case. And yet this is something Christians do all the time. You will know when a Christian who you've always has fellowship, when they have judged you and they don't like that you didn't bend to their will and cater to their observations as the moral authority, as having the moral high ground, they will tell you they can't deal with you anymore. This is what they do. I can't be friends with you anymore because you need to be better. Now, here's the thing. This is rampant in the church. Because people will disassociate themselves from you because they don't like what you're talking about. They don't believe there's one single issue. You could be in total agreement. The one day you say one thing they don't like, and if they try to convince you that it's something else and you're not convinced, you're not persuaded, then they are inclined to dissolve the relationship, to break fellowship. This is what Job is saying. You want to alienate me because I don't agree with your assessment about me when I know myself better than you? This is modern Christianity today. Sister Mariah says it right. They just write you off. I'm telling you, I could do this thing for the next 10 years, whatever, doing this. And you can always feel like you're walking on rice paper, that's about to rip. One little thing can break a relationship. One little difference of an opinion. You can have everything that pertains to salvation dead on. You can agree on that. But there's one thing. Well, I don't understand why you're eating pork. That's unclean meat. I like your doctrine that you hold to on salvation and mercy, grace, depravity, election. We're good on all of that. But you eat bacon, like Sister Meg says. So I don't know that we're in the same place. Do you realize how ridiculous that is? It's so ridiculous. System over sympathy. System over sympathy. This is what Christ says. This is what Christ meant when he said that Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. That's what he meant. You are lording the very thing over yourself and others that is supposed to be subject to you. This is why Christ leveled those 8 woes to the scribes that we went over last Lord's Day, I think it was. Because they started making modifications to the truth. In their minds, improving the system as though there was something God missed out on, that he should have included. You're chasing the gold rather than looking for what else was happening spiritually in the temple, which gives the gold value. What you should not be looking for is the gold, but the temple that sanctifies the gold. But this is how we are today. This is how we are today. And so Job's friends, they assume that if Job suffers, they feel that now they are qualified to bring an indictment against him. And Job denies that suffering grants them that level of jurisdiction over his own soul. Don't let anybody try to become the dictator of your soul. That's what Job is telling them. He says, I'm not vouchsafing my own soul to your care. You will not stand before God in my place. But there is one who does. And we're going to talk about that later in this chapter. Later in this chapter, we're going to deal with that. It's an important thing. So even when a suffering person has faults, correction should be measured and correction should be compassionate. When somebody is struggling, when somebody is fighting for their spiritual survival, don't try to crush them. Try to help them clarify the situation. Start by asking, what can I do to help? Like Brother Jeffrey, what can I do to encourage? What can I do to encourage? And so he's also saying that private faults don't warrant a relentless, continuous, and incessant reproaches. It doesn't need to be these 10 times that you do this. Work with me, help me to be reestablished. Comfort me in this time. Show me compassion. Show me the mercy that God's providence doesn't seem to be awarding me at this moment. And I don't know why, but I will not charge him falsely because I know that all things that he does is good.